Allow me to introduce you to ADAMA.
Atlanta is the Black Mecca. We know this already. We are home to people of African descent and the epicenter of arts and culture.
But where can you go to experience Black art and culture, illuminating the depth and breadth of the African diaspora?
Launched in March 2020 as a museum without walls, ADAMA quickly emerged as a space that is already engaged in communities around the world.
The best part about being a founding member of ADAMA
is knowing that I'm part of making history.
By contributing to ADAMA, you're joining a global community of dreamers and builders,
bringing forth a world-class museum
that highlights the Black global experience.
And it's all happening here.
Right here.
Right here.
Right here, right now.
Right here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Join us.
Give.
And get involved.
ADAMA. What's happening? Hello, hello, hello. I am Dr. Fahamu Pecou. I'm the founding director of ADAMA and very, very happy to be here for edition number 28 of the ADAMA Art Salon. We have a fantastic conversation coming up for you today, and I'm really looking forward to dive in. But before we get into that, I want to just take a couple moments to pay some respects and acknowledge the dynamic and amazing ADAMA board. Big shout out to all of the hardworking professionals, creatives, collectors, organizers behind this institution. We are steadily growing and you know, have some exciting things planned for this fall for the city of Atlanta, and really looking forward to sharing more of ADAMA's programming with you. Also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge our interim director, the village chief, Stephanie Fleming, for all of her hard work in coordinating the design of our new website. I hope that you have had an opportunity to visit the new and improved ADAMA website. As you can see, we have a really beautiful streaming platform that we're now using to broadcast our programs like the ADAMA Art Salon. And so we just want to give a big shout out to Stephanie for that, and to all of our amazing interns or ambassadors for all of their hard work. Please make sure that you tell a friend, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn, or whatever your social channels are. Make sure you give us a follow, and also remember that you can support. We are a nonprofit institution, and we are now, you know, happy to accept contributions and donations and subscriptions. So please, please, please consider a gift to ADAMA. It is tax deductible, all that good stuff. I'm just like, I feel like I'm going really fast because I'm really excited to get into our conversation today. We are really thrilled to welcome Danny Simmons, who is a mentor of mine, a good friend, one of the first people to ever show my work when I graduated from undergrad back in 1997. Danny is an artist who has been practicing for over 4 decades. He creates paintings, works on paper, and assemblages informed by the spirit imbued in indigenous and African cultures. He's the founder of the artistic movement Neo-African Abstract Expression, where he reclaims traditional African motifs used in modernism through his use of dots, textiles, and tribal markings. Simmons is also an author, poet, philanthropist, curator, and creator of Deaf Poetry Jam, and founder, along with his brothers Russell Simmons and Joseph Reverend Run Simmons, of the renowned Rush Philanthropic Arts Foundation. Through their nonprofit, Rush Arts Gallery New York and Rush Arts Philadelphia, they have served as an important cultural hub, providing exhibitions, arts education, and opportunities for hundreds of emerging, developing, and underrepresented artists of color since 1995. Simmons is also a collector, a prolific collector, I might add, of contemporary African art and sculpture. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage my man, 50 grand, Danny Simmons.
How you doing?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I really enjoyed watching that video. That was kind of dope, man. Y'all put together a good video about y'all.
We coming with it, man. We coming with it.
Yo, no, seriously, it's good to hear about all that fly stuff you doing down there in Atlanta. Well, I guess it's not even in Atlanta; it's everywhere now because of this sort of platform. You're just based in Atlanta, but you global, brother.
That's always the plan, always the move. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you gotta plant your feet someplace and then reach your hands outwards, to see what you can grab.
There you go.
Yeah, man.
Well,
so how you feeling?
well,
How you feeling?
good. I'm real excited about this show getting ready to come up next Saturday. There's a lot of things that we're working on towards the end. I just got through proofreading the essay for the catalog. I mean, there's a lot of little things, but I'm so excited about the work I've done over the last 2 years that it's gonna be exhibited on 2 different levels, and it's a new gallery representation with an old friend who I met in 2011 on a project I was doing. I hadn't seen him in many years, but he just rolled up on me. He called me up and said, "Danny, do you have representation?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, we've just opened last year in a new spot, and we'd like to show your work and represent you." And so we started hanging out and renewed our friendship, and it's looked like it's going to be like a really dynamite show, man. We got a huge amount of RSVPs and like over 40 paintings being shown.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a lot of work.
A lot. Listen, I've been in the house, man. It's been COVID. I've been up in my studio.
Well, I wanted to. Well, first of all, before we go into it a little bit, what's the name of the gallery for our people who are?
It's Westwood Gallery in New York City on Bowery Street.
Okay.
Right down the block from the new museum.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's a really great location.
Yeah, so you got to walk past the gallery, look through the windows, see my work before you get to the new museum.
I know recently we had a conversation here in Atlanta, as a matter of fact.
Yes, we did. Because,
and
Denise Jackson hosted it, yes.
Yeah, that's right. You shared during that conversation the ways that, that COVID, had inspired your practice, or at least given you the space to create in ways that you hadn't, done previously. And I wanted you to maybe talk a little bit about that and how that connects to this exhibition that's coming up.
Well, quite frank, I was, hanging out a lot. I wasn't doing a whole lot of hanging out except for going to art shows and stuff like that. So it didn't really change the amount of time I had, but it really to paint, but it changed my headspace, and it made me feel like, I need to stay in and do something. And while I'm in do something, and the best thing I know how to do is write and paint. So I did a lot of writing over that period, 2 years, and a lot of painting. And the paintings, I found something out really, not strange, but, the more I painted, the more the painting called me. It's like, before I moved to Philly, I was on a lot of boards of directors and this and that and the other. And so I painted when I could. And it was not necessarily always my first priority. Now I want to paint every day because the momentum of creating opens something up, and I just want to create. And I just, the first thing I want to do when I get up in the morning is hit the studio. And I'm afforded the opportunity to do that because it's right here in the crib.
That's awesome, man. I'd love the fact that you're not only creating more in terms of making the work, but also just being in that different headspace, and how that is contributing to what you're producing now, right? Like, I know you talk a lot about the ritual aspect of your making process,
right?
Yeah, and I imagine that the more you practice this ritual, the more intense the work becomes.
Yeah, like like I was telling you, like, either when I saw you in Arkansas or I saw you in Atlanta, that I paint completely in silence. I don't have music on or anything, and that sets the tone for me, at least as an artist, to channel in whatever's coming in without interference. If you can get what I'm saying, it's just me, the paint, and the silence, and so I'm able to dig deeper within myself or be more receptive to new thoughts and new ideas. But one of the things also that happened is I became less guarded about, I was like, oh, if I do that, I was just like, paint more deeply from your inner self and stop worrying about how it comes out, worry about how it comes out of you instead of how it ends up on the canvas. And so I became looser with my painting and looser with the use of form and movement. And that all happened because of, I don't want to say practice, but it happened because of time put in. You know, I was like, I'm here and it's just me, this canvas, and not as many things entering my head from outside as it used to be.
Yeah, I love that because you know there's something to be said about the kind of persistence, right? That's required in creating. You know, I think a lot of people have a misconception about artists that you get hit like a lightning bolt by this burst of inspiration, but really the true essence of the work comes from just doing. Like the more you
doing the
do,
work.
right,
Doing
right.
the work. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's true. I mean, I do think both are true. I think that the creative burst comes in, but that's something, you know, and then you paint, but that's something that can be sustained through, I guess, just continually working at it. And the other thing is if you find joy in it, and
Right,
it's not
right.
labor.
Yeah,
You know, this
exactly.
is something, if you find joy in what you're doing, you know, it returns the favor by showing itself on the canvas or however you create. Well, when you find joy in it, you're really bringing yourself to it instead of, oh, this it's like a job. You know,
Right.
it's not. It's a passion, really. For me, it's more of a passion. Although I like the fact that it pays the bills as a job. But yeah, you know, the job aspects are pretty cool. But the passion, the fulfillment that you get from creating something, at least, like, you know, like, oh, and when I look at it, I feel more than I was before I did it. And it's like drugs, man. It feels like, oh shit, I took a hit. I took a hit. And each painting is like taking a hit because it's just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. You definitely. I mean, it definitely like is a like what is it? The endorphins or something like that. Like
Yeah.
it wakes it up for you. It makes me think too. You know, we've spoken a number of times about the spiritual connotations and implications of not only your work but of African diasporic art practices, right? And one of the things that's always been really fascinating to me, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of the author, but there's this essay called "No Word for Art in Our Language," and it talks about the fact that what we call art, right, like, is largely a European construct. However, you know, indigenous cultures have always had some kind of creative expression, creative exercise that they do, but they didn't necessarily call it art, right? It wasn't about the commodity of it as much as it was about the connection of it, right? Like, you know, how do you connect to something higher than yourself? And
Right.
art becomes a way of doing that. And I just wanted to, you know, ask you maybe to speak a little bit more about that in your practice, because I know, like, you know, it's not just that you're painting, but you also make your own paints, right? So like every aspect of your practice, right, is in itself a ritual.
Yeah, it's ritualistic. One of the things that I, you know, when I started thinking about the creation process, not considered painting process, and linking it back to indigenous cultures, one of the things that I really thought was, like, you take a piece of wood as a sculpture. The wood itself is not the vehicle; it's what you put into it, and it's what the maker puts into it that makes it a spiritual object, that makes it a spiritual connector, and so if there's nothing actually special about the wood, then why isn't that same thing transferable to paint or dance or whatever you do? That the spirit comes from you out. And if you're going to put it in something, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. You know, the object, you know, the hoodoo can go into anything. Your hoodoo can go into anything. And where it comes from, the impulse that comes from, the universal impulse that it comes from, when you're doing that, it's like an open channel, and it's going through and it's passing through you. You're just the facilitator. And so the fact that they didn't call it art, because in many ways, when they did that, it created something. It was functional in many ways. You know, I collect a lot of African art, but it always had a meaning tied to it other than beauty, just the beauty of it. I mean, now more contemporary arts are tied more to the art market and beauty and showing it to other people as for adulation or whatever people show their art for. But before, it was to protect the village or to grow into man or the womanhood or this, that, and the other. These objects represented spirituality and spiritual happenings in our lives that, you know, these were conduits to or protections from. And so I don't think that I'm quite there as at where a shaman would be in a community, but the same idea that I could put my spirit from me into this painting. I think, you know, I don't think I can make it do something like, you know, keep out people's spirit, but I think maybe if I practice more, but I think that the painting is able to resonate me instead of my facility as a painter, that somehow I'm part of that painting, you know, instead of just, oh, he paints really good, you know, which anybody can learn how to, you know, anything. But not everybody has the ability or thinks they have the ability to put themselves and leave their imprint on something. And I just think I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, obviously, you know, I think a lot of people feel that way about your work too. You know, there's um, uh, a really sort of a visceral thing that happens when looking at your paintings. Like you can feel it. You know what I mean? Like it's the texture, the movement, the rhythm. You know, color, composition, like all of these things coalesce in your work. I think in really powerful ways. And yeah, I would call you a shaman. I would call you a shaman.
Okay, I'll take it. I would take it. I mean, but yeah, man, I think a lot of that's out here, and I think art or the creation of objects would be further if we weren't looking to how much it looked and more to what it invoked in you. You know, how do you connect to this thing? You know, I think that the focus on just having a beautiful object should be less than the focus on having an object that's meaningful.
I get yeah, for sure. And I want to just kind of, before I shift gears, I did want to ask you to unpack a little bit, and I think we kind of have been doing this as we've been talking about your aesthetic, but your coining of the term Neo-African abstract expression, I think that needs to be we can't just gloss over that. Like that's super important in the context of the conversation that we're currently having, right? Like this idea of the art having a function. And when you think about abstract expression, particularly from the European aspect, you know, abstract expressionism was was a very intellectual, you know, like kind of heady exercise in a lot of ways. But I think the Black artists who have moved in that space, you know, and you certainly being a part of that canon, have created something that has a much deeper resonance, and particularly for Black people. You know, I don't think a lot of Black people have had the kind of relationship with abstract expressionism because it has oftentimes been presented to us in a way that's, you know, like it's over our heads. You know what I mean? But this idea of a Neo-African abstract expression, I think, is important and important to unpack.
You know, you said something, and you know, the intellectualism of abstract expressionism was really a deconstruction of the intellectual of precise painting. You know, it's like the intellectual pursuit of finding how to let go to create. It came to you then from an intellectual pursuit. However, it manifested in freedom to put paint and so, you know, so that's what not the thought of abstract expressionism, but the result of the freedom that Jackson Pollock and his contemporaries had. And quite frankly, Norman Lewis also, who was at that time part of that movement. You know, when I saw that, you know, well, first let me start with, I didn't go to art school. I went to school to be a social worker. Okay. And so I didn't necessarily have the intellectual grounding. I read a lot, but I didn't have the intellectual grounding and the critique on painting forms and this, that, and the other. I approached it from a more spiritual aspect. And so when I started painting, I started taking things from places And the first places I started taking things from was the modernists, because that's what was put before you. And from the modernists, I saw all the African influences. When I realized what the hell I was looking at, I said, I'm looking at painted African art as seen through a European lens. And that's what resonated with me. And you know, you can tell by my collection that the African forms resonate with me very deeply. And then when I started looking at abstract expressionism, I started thinking, well, where did this come from? If I could somehow take African spirituality and tie it to the concept of finding that point and then letting it out, letting it go. That was the neo-African abstract expressionism, a new way of looking at African spirituality, because quite frankly, you know, I'm an African American. And so I can't claim the same cultural traditions, you know, that Africans from the continent claim, because they were raised different in different cultural. I was raised more in a Western, you know, concept. So when I married those two, my painting style reflected that. I said, I want to understand and channel this Africanness in me, but I don't want to let go of this contemporary Western thing that I admire, this painting. And so I tried to start melding them. And, you know, when I first started doing that, it was through abstract figurative art, and that didn't quite do it for me. And when I started developing the concept of neo-abstract, it started with a dot. And the dot was in body painting. I said, this is how I escape from the figure for me. You know, and if I stop, the body painting and the dotting and everything allowed me to have pathways that represented the African thing I needed to know with the patterning and the dotting, but it let me be freer than contained in a form. And so that's how I started getting there. And as I moved along, then the colors are very important, that represent mostly earth tones and earth colors, and they come in there and they grab you. And so when I put all together, that's what the term I came up. Now, when I read that essay, it said a movement. There ain't no movement. It's just, you know, a movement. I read that. I said, well, that's very kind. But no, it really is just something personal for me. That's what I thought that I was doing. It would be nice if like other people thought of it that way. But, you know, I really tried to explain what I was doing as an artist. And that's what came out. So this is what I'm doing. I'm marrying new African aesthetic with European thing, a European painting concept.
I mean, it's a beautiful. I think it's a beautiful synergy or synchronicity that occurs, because, you know, to your point, you know, as a Black person who has grown up in the West, you cannot separate those two aspects, you know, of yourself from one another, right? Like it is essentially like who we are, and, you know, and our work should, you know, reflect that. So, you know, I can't, you know, say enough how much I'm inspired, you know, by your approach to abstract expressionism, but also to African creative and cultural retentions. I think like those two things they coalesce really, really powerfully in your work.
You know, well, there's 2 points I want to make. You know, in exploring this stuff, you know, I started looking at all indigenous cultures, and I find that the impulses in African culture is in all indigenous cultures. I mean, if you look at Aboriginal art, it's all coming from the same source. I mean, I think, you know, certain environmental things shifted things for people a little bit, but it's really all from that same spiritual source that all these peoples, even to this day, are creating in the same vein. You know, like if you look at Aboriginal art, it's different, but it's the same. You know, as African art. So I mean, so I was very pleased to find out that beyond what I was doing, that there's a whole group of makers around the world who are indigenous people who create from that same wellspring of universal creativity. I'm just happy to be a part of that. There was something else I was going to say, but I forgot it. It'll come back to me. Oh no, I got it now. It came back. That's the same shit hip hop is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's the same exact thing hip hop is. You know, from same thing is just the music part of it, but it's taking African beats and this and that and the other, and rapping about urban experience, but it's a griot type of thing.
Exactly.
So we're telling our stories, and you know, people are telling their stories, whether you like their stories or not. When people start talking, this is who they are, and they're telling it in a creative way. Now, if you don't like the messages that are coming through hip hop, change their stories. But don't tell people not to tell their stories.
Right.
You know, you got to change the story. When they're talking about the guns and the this and the that and all the things that people say is ratchet, this is what their lives are.
Right.
And they're just reporting on their lives. And so the society who says, y'all, this is terrible, you shouldn't be talking about that, you shouldn't have these people in these conditions. These are the things that they grew up with. These are the things that they face day to day. You know, and so this is their response. And better they're talking about it than putting a cap in your ass, because it's a lot of it's anger.
Yeah,
and a lot of it, you know, whether it comes out as anger. Well, you know, Black people are angry, whether they know it or not, because they see all this around them. This is what all this consumerism is. I'm trying to catch up.
Yeah,
y'all showing me all this wealth, and then I look around and there's none of it. I need some of it. Right. It's all a response, you know, to the society. I don't mean to get political, sorry, but I could go on for days about, you know, where a lot of things come from, and you know, one of the things I did study was social science, and a lot of my art practice, you know, outside of being a painter, is about trying to fix these problems through art, you know, with Rush and all of that stuff.
Well, yeah, that's a great segue too, because I wanted to talk a bit about Rush Arts and the genesis of that, but also, you know, some of the other properties that you've had, like Def Poetry Jam, right? And you and your family are really like at the forefront of hip hop as we know it. So it's very much also, you know, it's very much also a part of your practice and your aesthetic as well.
You know, all of that stuff for me, Rush, Def Poetry, is all about, you know, at the core of it is about social justice. I mean, I didn't create Def Poetry just to make a TV show. I created Def Poetry for the message that it brought to other people. You know, I wanted people to hear what these poets were saying. I'm glad it became a TV show, and it became, by making it a TV show, it made it a broader base. But the thing is, getting these messages out. Most of the messages in Def Poetry and in spoken word in general, not just Def Poetry, but were about social change and what's going on in society, and how it, or if it's not talking about the broader society, it's how their place how they're handling their place in this society, with different things in their lives. And I thought all those messages had to get out. And the same with Rush. You know, I think art is a huge healing factor in our community. That if people have art in their lives, are changed for the better. And so, you know, it's always been important to me to create spaces where that can happen, and create opportunities where that can happen. So we have the children's program for kids, so they can learn art and become like, I created something. Oh, wow, I have power. I took nothing and created something. Or artists who can see who careers have been furthered through the experience they had at Rush or Corridor, or now Rush Arts Philly.
I you know, mentioned this in the introduction, you know, that your corridor gallery space in Brooklyn, one of the first, you know, like you were the first person to ever curate my work into a show, right after I graduated from Atlanta College of Art back in '97. But you know, I'm one of a very large number of really prominent Black artists, contemporary Black artists who have come through Rush Arts program. Like who else have you would you, if you could drop names for us that we might know?
Simone Lee had her first show at Rush.
Wow.
Kehinde Wiley had one of his first shows at Rush, as well as Micheline Thomas, Wakeshi Mutu. The list goes on. I can walk around my house because I collected a lot of them when they were like, coming out of grad school and this, that, and the other. I don't have none of the contemporary stuff for the hundreds of thousands. But so many, Allison Janae Hamilton, somebody moved further down the line, Cullen Washington, Hank Willis Thomas, curated shows, worldwide curators. Larry Osamensa had his first curation experience at Rush. You had your first experience at Corridor. Amy Sherrod, who painted Michelle Obama, had one of our first experiences at Corridor. And a lot of that, had to do with, I created the space, but a lot of that had to do with Derek Adams being, and of course Derek, but he didn't show himself together. Derek was our longtime curator. These are all his good, and he's a world famous artist now. But Derek was our curator, and he brought all these young artists at the time to my attention, and to the attention of the gallery, because that's who he hung out with. That was his age group. If it had been up to me, it would have been all Ed Clark and all the old greats. But my idea was to pair these young people with the old ones and have a conversation between generations of artists. But quite frankly, is Derek's curatorial vision, that created that atmosphere that all these young artists used to flock to Rush. I created spaces because I knew there was a need for the spaces, but I didn't necessarily know all the players. So I have to give big props. And Derek's my baby cousin. His mom's my first cousin. So Derek. So
that's what's up.
Yeah, family thing. So Derek, really set the curatorial agenda for those years that most of that stuff was happening. It still goes on today with new artists are coming out of Rush all the time that are having their first opportunities and now showing in wider spaces. It's still, a place, even though I'm in Philadelphia and not in New York anymore, it's still, and Philadelphia is a completely different place in market and everything. We're still launching careers for people having their first solo shows or being part of group shows. And it's a vibrant part of the community because there's no cultural outlet in the neighborhood at all where I place Rush. And for a reason, because not only
West Philadelphia?
West
You were referring to West Philadelphia?
Or Corridor Gallery at the time when I put it in Brooklyn. There wasn't nothing over there but people selling crack. It became Clinton Hill and blew up and gentrified. But one of the things that's important is that we bring all of this wonder and art to our community. It doesn't make sense for us to create all this stuff and then export it immediately to other people's communities just because they're nicer or perceived to be nicer, put it that way. When I first opened Corridor Gallery in Logan, people said, nobody's going to come over there. Ain't nobody coming over to that neighborhood. Man, they come over by the hundreds. Please. And not just Black people, everybody comes because the art is good. The art will bring them. And the art will transform a community, hopefully not to the point of gentrification, stop us short of that, but, bring a whole new aesthetic and the community really appreciates it because a lot of people in the community stop in and bring their kids and, oh man, I'm so glad you put this in our neighborhood. There's nothing like this around here, and the art classes for the kids in the neighborhood. It's all, listen, I grew up in the civil rights movement with my father. All of it's in the service of our people. All of it.
That's what's up, man. And I know that you guys are celebrating 25th anniversary of Rush Arts this year.
It's really more like 28, but
28,
we had to take away the pandemic years. So we never did the 25th, so we're calling it the 25th. Yeah.
Okay.
And we're putting out, and thank you so much we're doing a 25th anniversary portfolio of 12 artists, limited edition. And Fahamu is one of the artists that donated an image that we're reproducing. So you can get a box set from Rush of 12 fantastic artists. I'm not going to go through all of them, including Dr. Fahamu Pecou. And this is the benefit rush to keep the doors open.
That's
basically.
What's up, man. Well, real quick, how can people get access to that? Because I know, it's probably going to be people hitting us up after this. Like, how I get that Rush Arts portfolio?
You can leave a message on my Facebook page. That's the best way. I don't know offhand. I'll tell you the guys. So I'll find out for y'all. I'm Danny Simmons on Facebook. If you just go there and leave me a message in Messenger or on Facebook that you're interested in seeing the portfolio, a brother named Beresford Booth, who was the curator for the Petrucci Foundation, really helped curate this and did a wonderful job of pulling artists into this and getting a friend. My friend Stephen Gross, who's a printer, Brooklyn Editions, printed it for us for free. All 12. I don't know how many sets, because there's artist proofs, the artists get one. But let's say 40 sets of these packages. You're going to get a package of everybody for free. He's like, yo, y'all do good work. We're going to, I want to participate. I want to do this for you. So big shout out to Brooklyn Editions, who stepped up hugely in printing and sourcing the paper, even got that donated. And Beresford had spent hours and hours back and forth with these artists, getting signatures, and it's been a laborious thing, and it came out so nice.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for including me in that as well.
Man, thank you for listen. Yeah. And by the way, he's in my collection. Fahamu's in my collection.
Oh yeah, and you're in mine.
So there you go.
In a few minutes, I'd love to take a few questions from our audience. So, to our listening audience right now, feel free to drop any questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. But before we do that, I just want to ask Danny. I know your life experience, over and above your work as an artist and curator and philanthropist, is also equally rich and dynamic. Just the other day, I saw a post that you had on Facebook where you talked about an experience you had going through rehab, and how that changed the trajectory of your life so significantly. Yeah, I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
I don't mind talking about that. Obviously, I put it on fucking Facebook. Excuse my language. I grew up in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, and drugs were as much a part of everybody's life as sandwiches today. And I got addicted around at age 17 to 21 to heroin. And then I kicked heroin, and then I started again in my early 30s. I was still getting high, but it just wasn't dope. And then because of a lot of pain that I was in from multiple operations on my hip, I started taking painkillers and got hooked on heroin again, because when you couldn't get a painkiller. And so, I had a brownstone, a job. I had gotten my master's degree. My whole life was fine. And then I got strung out again over a couple of years. And I went to Russell. Russell came to me and said, yo, you are fucking, you got to do something. And I said, yeah, I know. And really, Russell put me in rehab, moved me out of my neighborhood where I was like hanging out with all the gangsters, and moved me to a loft. And he said, you want to paint? Go paint. And I was in this 5,000 square foot loft, and I began the process. And within a year, I had my first show and an open rush. Open Rush. First, I had Sanctuary Gallery in my house. Then I had Annex Gallery in Tribeca. Then finally, Rush Arts Gallery. And so, I replaced hanging out in the drug scene with, I immersed myself so deeply in the arts, it fulfilled whatever the dope was trying to fill. And it's been my life work for 30 years. I've never used it as a job. I've never used it as a means of making the gallery or any of those social things as a means of making money. I always used it as my contribution of myself, and my art itself, I use as, as work, but the other stuff is service to our community. But Russell has to be lauded for, saving me, because all I was thinking about when he ran up on me is, oh God, I haven't paid my mortgage in 3 months. How can I figure out how to save but pay my mortgage?
Wow.
And Russell was like, it's more than your mortgage, man. And so I went away and for a month came back, went to aftercare for a couple of months. Then I actually, because I had a degree in social work, became a drug counselor for 5 years. So I had 5 years of helping other people get clean. And people really got clean because I talked to them like, I didn't talk down to them. I didn't talk psychology to them or sociology to them. I talked to them about how to really stay clean, what you got to do, and so it worked for me. And like I said, May 5th, I was 30 years clean.
Wow. Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations. And I think it's so fascinating. You mentioned this earlier, like you alluded this earlier, to the feeling that you get from painting, being very similar to the feeling that you get, like that elation that you get.
Euphoria. You get euphoria.
Right.
But I mean, I literally, half the time when I'm in my studio, I have no conception of time. I mean, I'm just really in it. The door goes, if my wife comes by to open the door, I'm like, whoa, oh, hey, how are you? Because I mean, I become immersed in the process. And I guess that's the shamanistic aspect of it, that I'm in there channeling and the spirits. I'm cutting, when I'm doing the fabric, I'm cutting out the fabric and I'm gluing and I'm pasting and I'm painting and mixing everything together, and then mixing paint out of powders and liquids, and making it this consistency and that consistency. I mean, it's really a process and fun and fulfilling. That's like, I'm really doing something that's meaningful to me and to other people.
Yeah, it's such a like seeing your work, knowing your story, even hearing more of your story now. It just it makes me even more grateful for not only the work that you produce, but the work that you've done, as an organizer, as a curator, and when I say curator, I don't just mean in terms of like curating art exhibitions, but curating spaces, curating community, right? Like the way that you go beyond, canvas, to touch people. Like I think that's super super powerful, and I got to give a shout to Russell too for saving you, man. Where would we be without Danny Simmons?
No, he'd be just fine.
We didn't talk about your poetry today. You're published. How many books do you have at this point?
5, I think 5 books of poetry, and a novel and a graphic novel.
Okay.
And I really just got into, as I did in Arkansas, like working with other artists to perform poetry. In Arkansas, I worked with Vernon Reed of Living Color, good bad rock guitarist, and Dwayne Dolphin, a jazz bassist, and we did a fantastic
It was
show
awesome.
there.
It was awesome.
So I'm really getting out there more, and of course I have a CD out with Ron Carter on Blue Note Records. So I mean, me and Ron created a wonderful CD that was really well reviewed by a lot of people. So it's my poetry and Ron Carter playing the bass, and also Ron Carter's trio. And we turned it out. We recorded it live in Brooklyn, and Blue Note Records said, we love this. We're going to put it out. So it's called the Brown Beatnik Tomes. So if you want to hear, you can hear some of it on YouTube, or you can download it from Amazon or wherever you download stuff, or you can go buy the physical CD.
Okay. Are you going to be doing any performances or anything like that for your exhibition that's coming up?
We don't have a date, but we will do a performance of my poetry sometime in October.
Okay.
So the opening is Saturday, and the performance will be mid-October sometime. We'll find a date, and we'll start advertising that after the actual opening.
Oh, excellent. So we'll give people one last chance. If you have any questions that you want to ask Danny, we've got a couple more minutes here. please drop them in the chat. But in the meantime, what's next? What's next after this exhibition for you? Do you have anything coming up on this?
Yeah, I got a few things. October 7th, it's not me. Well, it might be me. I'm gonna probably do a poem. We're doing a tribute to Amiri Baraka at Newark Symphony Hall with a number of art. It's like a bigger version of what happened. And it's going to be poets and projected art and singers and musicians. And so it's all of us going to be on stage creating an experience for Amiri Baraka. And from then we got a couple more, and we call that Wordsmith.
Okay.
And we have a couple wordsmiths set up over the next year in different places. One we're going to do at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, where John Michelle is buried, near John Michelle's grave, as a tribute to John Michelle Basquiat. And we're working that out with Greenwood Cemetery now. They love the idea. And so, you know, I got a lot of poetry things coming up. And, you know, I just got to get past this massive art show that we're getting ready to do. You know, but we've been setting up poetry, a lot of poetry stuff. And I'm sure that a lot more art opportunities. There are about 4 art opportunities on the table now, book covers, this kind of stuff. You know, TV shows. One TV show contacted us to work on paintings for a script, and the character is a painter. So I might have to paint his paintings for him at different stages of development.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll see.
All right, so you about to get an Oscar, be the first visual artist to get an Oscar for making paintings in a film. Is that what you're
well, you won't see me. You'll just see the painting.
Now the painting's going to get an Oscar.
Yeah, the painting might get an Oscar. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
I'm seeing here flashing on the screen. There's a comment from Dawn Stringer. She said, "Without Rush, I wouldn't have had the confidence I have as an artist, and she will always support Rush Arts Philadelphia." So big shout out to Dawn Stringer.
She just had a beautiful, beautiful show at Aquaba Gallery in Newark. Big solo show. So congratulations on your show, Dawn.
Well, yo, man, I don't want to hold you too much because I know you got the studio popping. You got to get ready for this show coming up, man. We definitely appreciate you taking the time to join us today, man. This has been a great conversation and a great way to kick off our new season of the ADAMA Art Salon, man. You are a living legend. They say we got to give out flowers while people can appreciate them, while you can smell them. So, man, flowers, flowers, flowers. You know,
my man.
All of that.
Appreciate the opportunity. It was fun. It's always good talking to you, bro.
Oh, man, it's always
like we're doing an interview. Feel like we just kicking it.
You know, like we always do.
All right, baby. I'm out.
All right, my brother. All right, and one more time, the show is at that's coming up
at Westwood Gallery on Bowery. I can't think of the address off the top of my head. All you gotta do is Google Westwood Gallery in Bowery, and it's Saturday, September 10th.
All right.
So, but you have to RSVP, and we are really at our limit about the amount of people that can come and get in there. So if you don't RSVP today, I'm closing the RSVP list tomorrow.
Get them
we got 400 people. We got 400 plus people signed up to come. I don't want to create something that's makes it uneasy for everybody.
Right.
And everybody, if you come and wear a mask, because that's a lot of people in the gallery. It's their business.
Well, all right, my brother. Thank you, Danny.
Later, y'all.
Enjoy, brother. So yes, man, thank you guys for tuning in to edition 28 of the ADAMA Art Salon. Please, again, consider becoming a founding member of ADAMA by joining our Root membership. You can do this online at adamatl.org. We would love to have your support. We would love to have you continue to support our programs. Please tell a friend, follow us on Instagram, and remember, ADAMA, everywhere we go, there we are. Peace.